Chapter 1. Unexpected Roommate. I was attending a medical conference in Chicago some years back as head of corporate communications and investor relations for a Seattle biotechnology company. When I checked in at the hotel by the river, a woman at the front desk confirmed my reservation and handed me a key. Just to be sure, I said, "This is a non-smoking room, isn't it?" The woman frowned, checking her computer screen. "No, it is a smoking room. I asked for non-smoking." She looked up, gazing into my eyes. "Your roommate requested a smoking room. We can't change that." My jaw dropped. "I don't have a roommate." She nodded. "Yes, you do. It's a double-bed room. You have the same confirmation number." My eyebrows shot up. "Who is it?" "Dr. Agarwal." "But I don't know him. I've never met him. How could this happen?" I pulled out my hotel confirmation number and showed it to her. She shrugged. "That's the same confirmation code we have for the two of you." "But there's been a mistake. I need a different room. I can't share with him." She looked at me like I was being difficult, and she'd had a busy, trying day. "I'm sorry, but the hotel is fully booked and we can't change your reservation." "The computer must have made a mistake. Please, find me another room. I'll sleep in the basement if I have to." She shook her head, looking past me to the next person in line, and I stood my ground, narrowing my eyes. I didn't want to share my room with a stranger. Even if he was well regarded in oncology circles, I'd read his articles in scientific journals. The idea of being forced to have an unexpected roommate made my jaw tense, and I marched away, determined not to share a room. I went up to two people I worked with who were staying at the same swanky hotel. Lenny's eyes opened wide. "Dr. Agarwal is your roommate? He's really well known." Another woman nodded. "He's giving a presentation at this conference. I'm going to hear him speak." I swallowed hard, because my secret roommate was a hit with everyone but me. They were impressed and acted as if it might be a boon for me. A woman joked, "Keep the room. Get to know him better." I half smiled. "He's a smoker, and I've got Jerry at home anyway." Eventually, a friend who was in charge of an event at the hotel appealed to her contact, and the hotel found me a hotel room in the basement down a dim hallway. I was content in a room to myself until the next strange hotel episode took place. Chapter 2. You already checked in. I stood in line and finally got to the front counter at a major hotel in New York City. "I'm checking in as Susan Specht." A young woman in her mid-20s tapped away on a keyboard and frowned. Seconds passed. She asked for my hotel confirmation number, which I provided. I held my breath. Not again. A mistake couldn't happen a second time. Everyone else in my group checked in and left for their rooms. She glanced up, holding my gaze. "You already checked in, so we gave your second room away. I don't know why there were 2 reservations. It was a mistake." I blinked, standing at the check-in counter at night after flying in from Seattle. We had a big event tomorrow with investors, and I needed to sleep. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "I had 2 rooms, and you canceled one?" She nodded. "Yes, you had 2 reservations, and when you checked in this afternoon, we canceled the other one." I showed her my hotel reservation confirmation number, but she shrugged. I said, "I didn't check in earlier today because I was flying from Seattle. There must be another person with my name staying in this hotel." She shook her head. "That's very unlikely. Would you please check? Who is the other person who has my name?" She tapped at the keyboard. "Are you Susan Specht? From Rhode Island?" "No, I'm Susan Specht from Seattle. There's been a mistake, and I need a room." She pursed her lips. "Can I see some identification?" I showed her my driver's license, and she squinted at it. "We don't have anything available. The hotel is fully booked." I suppressed a groan. I needed to get a bed, not with the other Susan Specht, but all by myself. "Please," I said. "Please find me somewhere to sleep tonight and soon. I've had a long day. I'll take anything you have." I ended up in a smoking room right by a chiming elevator that came and went all night. But it didn't matter, because I could close the door and sit on the bed all by myself. Perhaps my secret roommate, assigned by a Chicago hotel computer, would have enjoyed it, but I didn't invite him. Chapter 3. The Engineers. I was in New York City another time for business meetings, staying on a hotel near Times Square. I walked in, locked the door, and slid a chain across for security. When I opened my suitcase, someone used a keycard outside and turned the doorknob. My heart thudded and I strode to the door. "This room is taken. Go away." The keycard clicked a second time, and the door slowly opened. But I held a foot against the door, and a chain across the opening kept the stranger from entering. I slammed the door shut with my hip. "Go away, I'll call security." Hearing male voices speaking in low tones on the other side of the door, I peered out through the peephole at two middle-aged men in green coveralls with ball caps pulled down over their eyes. A lean man on the other side of the door said in a gruff voice, "Engineering, let us in." A shorter man nodded and put his hands on his hips. "Go away." The skinny, taller man pushed a keycard in the slot on his side of the door again. The door clicked open, but I pushed back. My hands were sweating. My knees were trembling. "Engineering." In a trembling voice, I said, "I don't think so. Go away." The men spoke to each other, and the stout one leaned in saying, "We're here to fix your TV." "I didn't call for that. Nothing's wrong with the TV. Go away." They murmured to each other and shuffled away, heads down. I wished out a breath and called the front desk, saying what had happened. A man said in a concerned voice, "They weren't our staff. We'll look into this." Chapter 4. Chipped Tooth. In elementary school, I played flute in band, and during a school concert, I stood with Janet and Sally. Rehearsal had gone well, but when I gazed at the assembled students and teachers, my hands went cold. The music teacher started playing the piano and the audience stared at us. Janet and Sally started to play. My face heated with a blazing fire of embarrassment. I grasped the cold nickel flute with trembling hands. My body broke out in a sweat. I blew into the flute, but no sound came out. I tried to join in, but in my head, I was wallowing in a lake of self-doubt and shyness. My lower lip was moist with sweat. The flute slipped off my mouth. I held the instrument and managed to get 2 notes out of it at the end of the piece. People in the audience clapped. Sally and Janet gave me doubtful looks, and our music teacher later said, "I thought 3 flutes were supposed to be playing, but I only heard 2. I think the problem was my body matured early. I developed breasts and wore a bra in 4th grade. Boys chased me during recess, trying to snap my bra, while I ran away. Teachers on duty glanced over and did nothing. I never told my parents about the bullying. I was ashamed about my body being different from other girls. One day, things got out of hand. Alan chased me, calling me names. Broad girl, I'm gonna get you." "BG," yelled another boy, coming after me. I fled for the far side of the fenced schoolyard, near where my teacher was standing smoking a cigarette and talking with another teacher. Randy ran after me, and Gordon went around a jungle gym before advancing on me. They closed in on me, and I was trapped, standing by a metal circle in a play structure. Alan, who has now passed away, I noticed in the obits, shoved my head inside the metal circle, and before I could react, he karate chopped my neck. The force of the side of his hand drove my head down hard. My front tooth met metal with a mighty crack. I cried out, and the boys vanished. My neck hurt, and I rubbed it. I ran my tongue around my mouth. Part of my front tooth was gone. I started to cry, standing there in the playground at recess in the 4th grade. 2 teachers strode over and asked what was happening. "Part of my tooth is missing. He karate chopped me." I was sent to the school principal, who sat me down and glared as if the incident was my fault. I explained what happened, and he stood up. "I suppose," he said with a heavy sigh, "we should go look for the rest of your tooth." We hunted around in dirt and debris. but we didn't find the end of my front tooth. My parents never talked to me about it, that I recall. My mother took me to a dentist who said, "The tooth might grow in. I recommend we leave it and see what happens." You might guess that my experiences of being bullied in grade school is why I cheer for underdogs in the mysteries and thrillers I write. Sadly, you can see my chipped front tooth and my author chats on my YouTube channel videos under Susan Specht Oram, author. Chapter 5. Check Between Her Toes. My boy-girl twins were in 7th grade when I got a call from a middle school counselor. Two parents called me to say your daughter is dealing drugs at school. Their children told them about it. My daughter was home with a fever, and I'd taken the day off work to be with her. I screwed up my face and said, "What exactly did they say?" "That she's shooting up heroin in the boys' locker room during school, and she's selling drugs." I shook my head. I seriously doubt that. My red-headed daughter had been a target for bullying, despite my efforts since Montessori preschool, where 3 girls pushed her down in the bathroom. I arrived to pick up my kids at preschool, but the door to my daughter's classroom was closed. They were having a special meeting. I leaned against the wall, wondering what the problem was, and talked with another mother. The door opened and 4- and 5-year-old students shuffled out. The teacher called me in and said my daughter had been pushed down in the bathroom, and the school had no tolerance for behavior like that. It never happened again, and my daughter doesn't remember the incident, but it shows how cruel little humans can be. The middle school counselor spoke, bringing me back to the present. "She's homesick today, is that right?" "Yes, she has a fever, and she's sleeping right now." "I want you to go and check her for needle marks." "What?" "Yes, check between her fingers and toes and on her legs and arms for where she might have shot up." I whooshed out a breath. "This is nuts, but I'll do it. Who started these rumors?" "I'll hold on while you look." I let out a sigh, set down the phone and slipped into my daughter's bedroom, where she was fast asleep in bed, cheeks flushed red. I gently examined her, looking between her toes and her fingers, on her legs and arms. Her eyelids fluttered, but she didn't wake up. I slipped out of the room and closed the door. Picking up the phone, I said in a low voice, "There's nothing there. No punctures or needle marks, nothing. These accusations are absurd. She's in the 7th grade, for heaven's sake." "I'm sorry, but I had to ask you to do that, because 2 parents called about it and another mother told the principal." I groaned. "Who is spreading these rumors, do you know?" "I don't know, but I'll try to find out. We may never know." "This is crazy. A kid shooting up heroin in the boys' locker room? And parents believed it?" "They did, and they want your daughter kicked out of school for it." "She's being targeted because she's different, with her curly red hair and telling people she's gay. And the hooded black cape she wears doesn't help but attract attention." "She wanted the cape, and I helped her sew it. It was her idea." "Well, it makes her stand out." "No one should be accused of dealing drugs when they're not doing it. Please, get to the bottom of this rumor and squash it like a bug." "I'll try. I'll call students in my office and try to pry it out of them." The counselor chased the rumor, which wafted through school like a wispy cloud you can't catch in your hands. She called me a week later to report she hadn't gotten to the bottom of it. I said, "A girl was friends with my daughter until recently, and there was a rift. Maybe she started the rumor." "I'll check, but I want you to know parents are still complaining about your daughter being in school. I believe you, that she's not dealing drugs." A week later, she called, "You may be right. The rumor might have come from that other girl, but I can't pin it down or get her to confess. We'll consider the matter closed, and I'll tell the parents who reported this to let it go." Chapter 6. Whips on the Wall. I met a young woman in her 20s at a biotechnology company. Jane was an administrative assistant, and when she left for another job, I was offered her position. Months later, Jane invited me to lunch at her Pike Place Market apartment. I didn't know her well, but I went out of curiosity. I took the elevator up, and Jane welcomed me into an elegant apartment with white leather furniture. She watched as I paused in front of a featured wall, decorated with black leather whips and handcuffs. I shrugged because I'd worked as an artist and sold work in galleries and at art fairs for 10 years. I figured the display must be someone's idea of art. Jane smiled, which she rarely did when we worked together for a short time. I had pegged her as a nervous type who preferred PowerPoint slideshows to talking with people. We sat outside on our balcony, munching on takeout salads and making small talk. We had little in common, and the dull conversation confirmed it. She was single and 10 years younger than me. My twins were about to enter middle school. She set down her fork and faced me, ignoring the shimmering water of Elliott Bay and a ferry departing the dock. "Have you ever thought about becoming a dominatrix?" My fork hung in midair. My eyebrows slid up and my jaw dropped. She tilted her head and continued talking as if we knew each other well and were friends who could bare our souls, sharing intimate details. She gestured to the apartment, which was well appointed in a sought-after location near the waterfront. "I don't just work as an administrative assistant for an insurance company now. I also work nights and weekends as a dominatrix." I swallowed and listened, curious about her double life. She grinned. "That's how I pay for all this. I make a lot of money on the side. Guys in tech are willing to pay a lot for a woman to use a whip on them." I cringed but was spellbound by her secret. With her big round glasses, chubby cheeks and curly brown hair, I never guessed she would crack a whip in the bedroom. I gulped. "I never knew there was a demand for that." She nodded, leaning in. "I can't handle all the clients who want to see me. There are too many, and I'd like to hire you to work with me." "It's not something I've thought of doing." She tapped a red lacquered fingernail on the black metal patio table. "It's easy to do, and you'll rake it in. We'll take cash and split the proceeds. You can work only one night a week if you want. Just crack the whip in the air, tell them things, and boss them around in the bedroom, handcuffing them." I drew in a slow breath. I needed more money. Child support was overdue, and I was in the process of garnishing my ex's wages. My kids thought I liked eating scrambled eggs for dinner, but really that was what I could afford. I wanted to let her down gently, but questions caught in my mind, like pesky crows perched on my shoulder. This was my one chance to gather snippets of strange information from a reliable source. I said, "Isn't it risky?" She shrugged. "I've had no problem so far, and the money I'm making is unbelievable." I crossed my arms. I was due back at work in 10 minutes. "How do people find you? Craigslist and personal ads in the paper?" I let out a long sigh. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested." She beamed. "You'd be great. They'd love you." "Sorry, it's not my thing." I stood and thanked her for lunch. She walked me to the door, and I glanced at the wall featuring crisscrossed whips and handcuffs with a new understanding of what it meant. Opening the door for me, she smiled. "Think about it, and get back to me if you change your mind. We'd be partners, and I'd keep you busy. You'd make an unbelievable amount of money." The door closed behind me, and I rode the elevator down, realizing everyone carries secrets and I would never have guessed hers. I strode past Pike Place Market and headed to my office job. Sliding into my seat and answering the phone at work, I smiled, because I had another story to tell. Chapter 7. Rolling Pin. The door to my pottery studio flung open. Window panes and pottery vases and bowls on glass shelves rattled. A man in his early 20s stood in my shop, eyes darting around. Sensing danger, I clutched a huge heavy rolling pin at a table in back, where I was rolling out clay to form platters. He lurched forward, frantic and frenetic, extending his hands, looking ready to grab cash and run. Sweat beaded on his brow. I glanced at the phone 10 feet away. His gaze slid over a cookie tin, where I stored cash and checks until the end of the day. His eyes latched onto a door leading to a bathroom and a side door blocked by my larger kiln. He stopped and blinked, slack mouth hanging open, and I raised my rolling pin in the air, saying in a firm voice, "You'd better leave before I call the cops." He turned and fled, pots quaking in his wake. I locked the door, turned the open sign to closed, and returned to work, slicing slabs of clay with a sharp needle tool. And that was the last I saw of him or anyone like that. Chapter 8. The Customer's Son. An older couple, and I thought they were ancient then, being as how I was younger, so maybe they were in their early 50s, came in my pottery studio one afternoon. I didn't have kids yet, but I observed how careful the parents were, their bodies reacting to every twitch and jerky gesture from their maybe 30-year-old son. They looked around and spoke with me, and their son tried to speak, but I couldn't understand him. So I think I said something about why I made pottery and pointed to my 2 kilns where the pots were fired. The son nodded to me, and they left, gently closing the door. Months later, the parents came in without their son. They thanked me for being kind to him before, I mean, of course, who wouldn't, and told me this story. They'd never taken a vacation since their son was born, because they didn't want to leave him with anyone else. But it was time to try a holiday, and a social worker suggested they try leaving him at a halfway house near the university. With great trepidation, they dropped off their son, said goodbye, and flew off for their first vacation in 30 years. They beamed when they told me what happened while they were away, worrying, of course, as parents do, about their child left behind. A kind woman at the halfway house pointed to a typewriter on a desk and asked their son if he knew how to use it. She showed him how it worked. He wasn't able to form words, but he sat down and typed out a letter to his parents. A tear trickled down the mother's cheek, and she wiped it away before she told me, "His letter said he appreciated everything we'd done for him for so many years, but he wanted to live on his own. He was ready to move out of our home. He said he loved us and knew we meant well, but he wanted more freedom and to make his way in the world." She dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Her husband patted her back as they stood in front of my sale table with marked-down pottery, intended to draw people in and make them lifetime customers. He said, "We never knew. We didn't know if he could think or what was going on in his mind. All these years, and we never knew." "Wow, that's a wonderful story," I said with a smile. "I'm glad it worked out like it did." She nodded. "What if we hadn't taken that trip? We never would have known he wanted his independence." He shook his head. "What if the typewriter hadn't been there? I had no idea fully formed thoughts were going through his head. He wrote us a letter." They walked out hand in hand, leaving for the next chapter in their lives. Chapter 9. Waking up during surgery. My surgeon, who was a breast cancer survivor, called and said on a Friday evening, "I'm sorry to tell you this, but the pathology results show you have cancer, and we didn't get the margins. They double-checked the results to make sure it was right." My stomach churned and I gripped my husband's hand. He blinked back tears, listening to the doctor on speakerphone. The surgeon said, "You need another surgery to remove the cancer." My mouth hung open. "But I thought it looked benign." "It did, but it is breast cancer, and we need to schedule the surgery right away. Call the office on Monday to set it up." We hung up and I burst into tears, weeping on a man's shoulder who was familiar with death, dying, and disease. His mother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when he was young, and she passed away from cancer when he was 17. He helped her around the house. She taught him to cook meals, and he knew the long grind we were about to face. But to his credit, he didn't tell me that. He let me think the second and third surgeries would be easy, which is what I needed. I went in for surgery, trying to be optimistic, and watched a young man stride around the pre-op room. He was shorter than the other workers, and he held his head high when he walked. He had a brisk stride, while others glide around, as if conserving energy for a long day ahead. He came over to my bed and said he'd be my anesthesiologist. He left and my surgeon stopped by, cheeks glowing under a blue surgery hair bonnet. She patted my arm and left, and I sighed, knowing I was in good hands with her. But little did I know what awaited me in the operating room. They wheeled me in, and I looked up at bright operating room lights. Hospital employees buzzed about, garbed in blue gowns, wearing face masks over their noses and mouths. The anesthesiologist put a mask over my face, told me to breathe in and count to 10, and I did, closing my eyes and drifting off. Awareness crept in, and I heard my surgeon talk about a female who was sick with pancreatitis. It sounded like she was talking about a dog. I wondered if I was dreaming, but the conversation continued. Did I have pancreatitis, and they were talking about me? Instruments clanged in metal bowls. Conversation about the sick female continued. I realized I must be awake during surgery, but I couldn't open my eyes. I tried to talk, but nothing came out of my mouth. Was I having a nightmare? Maybe I was dreaming and imagining this. On went the conversation. They were operating on my left chest wall, but thank goodness I didn't feel a thing. I had to tell them something was wrong. I tried to yell, giving it a tremendous effort, but no words or sounds issued from my mouth. I was awake in a living nightmare, but no one knew, and yet they were right by my side. Move the hand, I told myself. Wiggle your fingers. You can do it. I tried to wiggle my right hand, but it was strapped down. Nothing happened. Focusing on my left hand, I told my fingers to move. Wiggle fingers in the left hand. Move. The operation continued. It was only going to get worse. I had to get their attention now. Putting all my effort into it, concentrating as hard as I could, I beamed all my force into my left hand's finger farthest from the thumb. Move, now, tell them I'm awake. Hand me, my surgeon said. I knew her voice. I was truly awake. I had to get their attention. I moved my left fingers a little, putting all my effort into it. I think she's awake, a nurse on my left side said. No one responded. Conversation continued. Instruments clanged. I moved my fingers again, giving it all I had. The little finger was most responsive, followed by the one next to it. Those digits saved me. The nurse in a high-pitched, loud voice, "She moved her fingers. She's awake." My surgeon said to the person behind my head, "Put her under." No response came from the anesthesiologist. I wiggled the fingers on my left hand. The operating room grew silent and still. My surgeon boomed in a loud voice, "Put her down right now." The next thing I knew, I woke up in the recovery room. Blinking my eyes, I watched the anesthesiologist skitter around the room, looking agitated. He came over to me and said, "You didn't wake up during surgery." I frowned. I heard the surgeon talking about a sick female. I heard instruments clang. If I wasn't awake, why did she tell you to put me under? His face flushed and he rubbed the back of his neck. "You didn't wake up during surgery." I croaked, "Yes, I did." He scuttled away like a water bug being chased by a slithering snake. And if I could have beamed him right there, I would have. What a jerk to gaslight me, especially when I was woozy from surgery. I took a slow breath and tried to calm my racing heart. My surgeon stopped by. "I'm sorry you went through that. I heard you talking about a female with a disease. She had pancreatitis. Were you talking about your dog?" Her eyes opened wide. "Yes, I was talking about my dog. You heard that?" "I did, but he didn't believe me." I pointed at the traitor anesthesiologist across the room, who should have kept me asleep on the operating room table. My doctor leaned over and looked at him, where he was pretending to arrange something but not moving things. He gave us a furtive glance and left. She nodded to me. "I believe you, and I'll speak with him about this. I was talking about my dog and you heard it. The nurse saw you move your left hand." I let out a long sigh and leaned back into the pillow. One of the worst things in life is to not be believed about something you know is true. The next day, my husband wrote a lengthy, polite but scathing letter to the hospital CEO, telling them what happened and how it must never happen again. My surgeon, when we saw her on my next visit, said it was the best letter the hospital had received, and it was sent to department heads and given a great deal of attention. She said the person at fault was being given additional training, and she apologized and promised it would never happen again. A few years later, I was in a local writing class and read a short fiction piece aloud about the incident. Another student spoke up and said it never happens. She knew because she was married to the chief anesthesiologist at the hospital, who told her patients think they woke up during surgery, but they're wrong. "You imagined it," she said. "But it happened," I told her in a stern voice. "My doctor acknowledged it, and I heard her talking about her sick dog. And if it wasn't real, why did my surgeon tell the anesthesiologist to put me under during the operation?" She fiddled with her papers and shook her head. "It doesn't happen." I met her chief anesthesiologist husband briefly at a book signing, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. She bought my first novel, Shore Lodge, and they hurried out into a dark, rainy night, probably glad to be free of me, an outlier and prover of things that never happen. Chapter 10. A New Dog. My husband glanced at a photo of the rescue dog I wanted to adopt. Our Beagle Mix rescue dog had passed away 5 months before, and I figured if we weren't going to travel in retirement, we might as well welcome a new furry member into our family. Jerry said, "She's a homely girl. She looks like Dobby in the Harry Potter movies." In her online photo, Abby was gaunt with a haunted look and sad brown eyes. I said, "She needs a home, and she's part beagle like Buddy was. She weighs only 22 pounds, so she'll be easy to lift. We can help her." He sighed. He'd rejected the idea of adopting a cute smiling puppy named Jack the week before. "Okay, let's see if she's available." 3 weeks later, we pulled up on a dark September before dawn morning in a parking lot in Marysville, north of Seattle, by a pet store. A big long truck was already there, having come all the way from Austin, Texas to Idaho, dropping off pets along the way, and to western Washington before heading south to Oregon. Rain drizzled down, splattering the windshield. A smiling middle-aged woman in a white hazmat suit stepped out of the bus and hurried over with a clipboard. I said, "We're here to pick up Abby. She's a Beagle Mix." The woman's eyes narrowed when I mentioned Beagle Mix, as was listed on the website, and she glanced at her clipboard, clearing her throat. She paused for a beat before saying, "Yes, here she is. I'll bring her out in a few minutes." We'd seen photos online of the animal's journey, where cats in hammocks looked miffed to be in close proximity to dogs. Oddly, though, I didn't see any photos of Abby. The woman went back to the truck. Dogs howled with a gut-wrenching sound. I whispered to Jerry, "I hope she'll be as good as Buddy was." He said in a gruff voice, because it was early and we hadn't had coffee yet, "No dog will ever be as good as Buddy was." I nodded. Buddy was the best. So our new girl had big feet to fill, and when she was brought to the front of the truck, her ears were down and her tail was between her legs. She squatted right there at the entrance inside the truck, letting out a long stream of urine. Abby balked on the leash, so the rescue shelter volunteer gathered Abby in her arms and brought her over to where I sat in the back seat with the door open, waiting for our new pup. She placed Abby in my arms, handed me paperwork and shut the door, waving and walking away. Other dogs left the truck walking on a leash to the new owner's cars, but Abby quivered and shook and trembled, quaking in my arms. I cooed to her and sang a little silly song, but the shaking continued. "She's really upset," I said in a low voice. Jerry drove and clenched his jaw. "Hope we didn't make a mistake." Fast forward to being home, where instead of walking on a leash, she melted on the pavement and managed to wrap herself with the leash around a rhododendron plant. She ran from my husband when he opened his arms in the kitchen and hid under a table. She cowered and trembled, and the first 2 nights, she whined to go out, tail between her legs every hour and a half. Being sleep-deprived wasn't something I'd planned on with a 1-year-old rescue dog, but we soon learned from a vet that she was more like 9 months old. I also learned that she'd been captured by the dog catcher in a small town in Texas. I looked up the dog catcher online and discovered my husband bore a resemblance to the dog catcher. In fact, Abby didn't like men. This was going to be a problem. Jerry fed Abby and gave her treats. A month later, her tail popped out from between her legs, and we learned when she's happy, her tail curls. It took a few years, but finally Abby and Jerry are friends, and she leans on him when he sips coffee and reads the news by the fire in the mornings. She didn't turn out to be a Beagle Mix at all, but that doesn't matter. She's a love, and that's what we needed, a 49-pound yellow dog who was starting her life over with us. Chapter 11. Green Light. I sat at the red light, the old sedan engine chugging, with my 4-year-old twins in the back, heading to preschool. Rain drummed down and wiper blades groaned. A hush fell over the car. "Tell us a story," my kid said. "Not now," I said in a quiet voice, keeping my eyes trained on the busy intersection. We were 2 cars back. Out of the clear blue, I heard a man's voice that sounded like my father's say, "Green doesn't always mean go." My head jerked. This was a first. My eyebrows shot up and I shook my head to clear the strange moment. It was like someone had spoken into my left ear. The light ahead turned green at the busy North Seattle intersection. The car in front of us moved forward and drove away, but an invisible force held me back. I kept my right foot frozen in place, poised over the accelerator. My kids piped up, "Drive, Mom, drive!" The car behind us honked, but I heard the clear voice say a second time, "Green doesn't always mean go." I stayed where I was. Second later, a flatbed truck raced down the hill to my left, running the red light. It blew through the intersection and rumbled past, carrying a full load of tall propane tanks, and raced west on Holman Road. I blew out a breath and pushed on the accelerator pedal, driving south. My hands trembled, gripping the steering wheel tight, and my heart thumped. "Why didn't you go, Mama?" "Because green doesn't always mean go,"